Hi friends, welcome to Pearls from the Heart Ministries with me, your host, Sarah Janusa. Last time we touched on the definition and the meaning and the roots involved in contempt, self-contempt. We also shared on the synonym of self-contempt, which is self-loathing, worthlessness, a toxic, harsh inner critic whose voice is so piercing, so crippling, that it takes a deluge of strength just to get through one simple task. Beloved friends, I want to encourage you to listen to some questions that I'm going to ask so that you can ponder and journal and contemplate where you are in your journey as you continue overcoming sexual abuse and trauma. So here goes. Evaluating your connection with your body, your mind, and your spirit is key. What is your body telling you? Self-contempt plays such a significant part in sexual abuse, rape, molestation, because there is an arousal in our physical, mortal bodies that is completely natural. It's completely normal. And it was created altogether pure and lovely in the sight of God. But when our bodies are masturbated or molested, abused sexually, raped, assaulted, that pure, undefiled, and natural response is now very twisted, very dark, insidious. It's an assault on your life, and it could take a lifetime to overcome. I'm here today to remind you that there is an anchor, there is hope that resonates not only in your awareness, not only in your determination and courage to overcome, but there's the anchor that lies at the foot of the cross. I'm here to remind you that God is merciful and He is altogether kind. It's encouraging to be kind to oneself, to give patience and grace as you rally through such a widespread field that could be littered tremendously with dynamite. I want to encourage you as you take each step through that littered minefield, that polluted minefield of self-discovery, of awareness, of memories that may have been hidden from your consciousness for years. I want to encourage you to be kind, to not give in to that feeling of self-contempt and worthlessness, that feeling of guilt and shame, because you may have to come face to face with the fact that there was a part of you that actually naturally enjoyed that abuse. Let's take a look at some more questions that I have written in my book, The Molester's Hand. What have been the effects of trauma when it comes to your mind, body, and spirit? Who – and what comes to your mind when you read this book? What areas of your life have you desired to take back? Things that you have lost, or what has been compromised because of trauma's effects? How long have you been trying to minimize, hide, or downplay that you have been a victim of sexual abuse and trauma? Who are you really? Do you live a double life? What do you do when you are triggered from your past abuse and trauma? And I'm going to stop with this last question. There's more. This is a great few pages of questions that you can just draw upon, to ponder, and to journal with. What has been keeping you caught in toxic cycles that you cannot seem to break free from? Before I go any further, I'd like to read a scripture, and it's found in the book of Psalm, and it's Psalm 36, verses 5 to 9. It says, "Your mercy, O Lord, is in the heavens. Your faithfulness reaches to the clouds. Your righteousness is like the great mountains. Your judgments are a great deep. O Lord, you preserve man and beast. How precious is your loving kindness, O God. Therefore, the children of men put their trust under the shadow of your wings." Friends, I want you to understand that you can find faith, hope, love, and trust. You can trust again. You may be battling with so much shame, so much fear, so much feeling of worthlessness and rejection that you may be operating in self-contempt and therefore self-sabotage. You may not even be realizing the guard that you have over your heart, the tower that you may have built where you are not going to allow anyone to victimize or to wound you again. You may be married. You may be a father and a mother of small children right now, still dealing with self-sabotaging behaviors, still self-preserving, still deep down inside listening to an inner critic that is so toxic, so poisonous, that your day is filled with self-contempt. I want to share one more scripture with you, and it's Psalm 103. I want you to hear the mercy and the loving kindness available to you today. "Bless the Lord, O my soul, and all that is within me. Bless his holy name. Bless the Lord, O my soul, and forget not all his benefits, who forgives all your iniquities, who heals all your diseases, who redeems your life from destruction, who crowns you with loving kindness and tender mercies, who satisfies your mouth with good things, so that your youth is renewed like the eagles." Loving kindness, tender mercies, and redeeming your life from destruction are words that are piercing to the wounded heart. I'm going to read you that early in my marriage, I faced years of apologizing for actions I was held responsible for that seemed so impossible to change. Exhibiting self-control was one of my toughest battles. Shame was one of my toughest foes. Hopelessness was one of my toughest liars to disagree with. But still, I had a grace to press on. Friends, beloved friends of the bridegroom, I beckon you to grab hold of grace today to press on. Once a victim of sexual abuse and assault, you become a captive of its shattering effects. Intellectually, I can relate to victims of abuse by connecting the dots in my own family, and therefore can somehow give some understanding of the connection in those that had been abused themselves prior, only to engage later in a repeat of that abuse by taking advantage of another. What my daddy did by inviting me to engage him in a sexual encounter at 6 was the very gateway that opened a brothel door of more sensuality, which alluded to more illicit sexual activities and sexual abuse to assail me. The little girl that he referred to as so delicate had already been placed in a landmine by his perverted actions for nearly 2 decades. 2 decades that turned into 4 decades as time continued patiently telling on my past. Groomers can sense cues in someone that they can easily coerce, bind up, manipulate, and then violate. I was certainly a delicate little girl that had been ridden with so much shame, lust, rejection, confusion, fear, and pain. A cycle of defeatism and powerlessness that cannot be numbed, but rather can be overcome with healthy and wise engagement is what it takes to break these cycles. Breaking reoccurring cycles is initiated within the beginnings of your acknowledgement of trauma itself, of the abuse itself, the awareness that you may haven't had in years. To those that have been abused, this road seems treacherous to consider and feels dangerous to discover. Friends, it is a re-traumatization of the abuse when you decide to seek the victory, the freedom, and the redemption of your life. I encourage you to consider taking that hope, taking these words and bind them to your wounded heart. Words that are the love language of heaven. Words like faith, delight, hope, love. Because self-contempt will masquerade itself in honoring the victim. If you were victimized by a father, by a mother, you may be so filled with self-contempt out of understanding why that they abused you, understanding that they have been victims themselves. But beloved friends, no. What you were put through and how you were victimized cannot ever be defended, no matter what the relationship is to that person. You owe no loyalty. And the self-contempt that you may be in bondage to today is from the deepest, darkest, nefarious, and insidious pit where victims lie. But today, you can climb. You can climb out of that pit and start to release and argue back with self-contempt, with taking ownership of being partly to blame in the abuse. You can defy that because you are not partly to blame. A victim is not partly to blame. Self-contempt masquerades in relentless perfectionism, post-mistake shame, chronic negative self-talk, body hatred, self-destructive behavior, and self-sabotage. Friends, words like blame, guilt, contempt, worthlessness, condemnation, shame, it's very cruel. It's very, very cruel. I invite you today to start removing one barb at a time and rephrasing the words that will come from that inner cruel voice called self-contempt and shame. Remember, you are not to blame. You are not to share guilt with your abuser. Release that today. And I will see you next time. Be blessed.